Still no decision, and no one knows what's going to happen. 3 rounds of voting for Speaker and 3 defeats for Leader Kevin McCarthy. After the first round of voting, a defiant McCarthy saying he's not going anywhere, touting the progress that the House GOP has made under his leadership.
I'm not going anywhere. We have worked for a long time. I've been leader for 4 years. I came into this position and we had less than 200 members. We are now sitting in the majority. We put forth to the American public a commitment to America. I will always fight to put the American people first, not a few individuals that want something for themselves. So we may have a battle on the floor, but the battle is for the conference and the country, and that's fine with me.
So where does McCarthy go from here? And what in the world is going to happen next? This is The Record. Well, insanity is one word some may be using to describe Capitol Hill today, and whatever word you would use to describe it, I think you would all agree it was not dull. In fact, it was almost electrifying. Congressional correspondent Kilmeny Ducard has the latest from Capitol Hill. Kilmeny?
Greta, good to be with you. The third time was not the charm for Kevin McCarthy. We had hours after the House convened its 118th Congress where you could see fractures within the GOP, visible division within the GOP playing out on the House floor today. We know that the House has officially adjourned until noon tomorrow. And from this point, whatever happens from here is the fact that the GOP conference will likely be meeting tomorrow morning to hash things out, but the wounds are still a little bit too fresh. We spoke with a few members to see where things stand at this point. We know that Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, she as well as Congressman Gates and Perry, they had put together a package deal for McCarthy that included concessions that they wanted the House Minority Leader to make in order to win his bid for the speakership. That included a House floor vote on term limits, approving their Texas border plan, and separately that motion to vacate. They said that McCarthy rejected that and that ultimately that offer is still on the table. But we've seen this deal play out. Congressman Chip Roy said he's not going to be the first to blink. We heard him nominate Congressman Jim Jordan in that third round. Jim Jordan got even more votes during the third round than he did the second. So again, this process continues to play out. I also spoke with Congressman Ralph Norman, who said he is still dug in his opposition against McCarthy. He said that the deficit spending and the failure to balance the budget, those are perhaps the most important issues. And he doesn't think that McCarthy is willing or able to bring that across the finish line. Then on the other side of that, you have Congressman Pat Fallon, who told me earlier that as long as Kevin McCarthy's name continues to be put up for the speaker, he will continue to vote for it. In the meantime, Greta, no House business can be done until a speaker is elected. So certainly the chamber is going to be paralyzed in the meantime until Republicans figure this out.
Kilmeny Ducard on Capitol Hill, thank you. And McCarthy's holdouts remain firm against him, but there are signs that more Republicans could seek an alternative. National correspondent Logan Raddick joins me. He's also on Capitol Hill. Logan?
Well, Greta, the thought initially here on Capitol Hill today was that McCarthy would obviously lose on that first ballot, but would eventually gain ground in the future ballots throughout the day. But that was not the case. 19 Republicans voted against McCarthy in that first round for other GOP candidates, including Jim Jordan and the others that Kilmeny just mentioned. Same with the second round, but then in the third round, there were 20 because Byron Donalds also voted against McCarthy for a different Republican candidate. And here is Donalds telling me why he did that.
First, I think Jim will make a tremendous Speaker of the House. I think he has all the capabilities to do that job and frankly, lead our conference in a time where we have an administration that must be held accountable. We have serious negotiations on debt ceiling and spending coming up, which, in my view, we need to start doing it from a much more conservative posture. And so I think he would do a great job. I think the second piece of this is that at this point it's clear Kevin McCarthy doesn't have the votes. Now, that doesn't give me joy. I'm not an anti-Kevin guy, but he doesn't have them. And so we have to find who does. And so I'm interested in seeing who can get us there and lead our conference the way it needs to be led so we can actually get America back on track.
And I asked Donald if he might be that guy to get over that 218 vote threshold. He says he's not thinking about it right now, but he won't rule out a bid for Speaker of his own. But Brent, if one thing's clear tonight, Kevin McCarthy, after 3 rounds, does not have those 218 votes, and it's looking like he might have started moving into the Speaker suite a little too soon, because right now all indications are he won't be the next Speaker of the House. Back to you.
You know, Logan, we all get to watch this on television, but you're there, and it's so much different being there. Can you give me some of the local color? What does it seem like there? I mean, is there tension? Can you feel the tension, or is this just intellectual differences or policy differences? What's it like?
It's a mix of emotions, Greta, because you can feel the tension among the members, but there's also their families here. And a lot of these members who are new members of Congress wanted to be sworn in today in front of their families. That couldn't even happen. As Kilmeny mentioned, business crippled in the House without a speaker. So there are those mix of emotions, especially from the majority of the Republican conference. They really want those holdouts to come over to McCarthy's side. They think it's an unnecessary fight right now, especially with the concessions that McCarthy has given them, but still they're holding firm, and it looks like they're going to have to find an alternative, whether it be Jim Jordan, Byron Donald, Steve Scalise, just somebody other than McCarthy might have a chance of getting 218 votes on the GOP side.
Logan Radek, Capitol Hill, thank you. California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa joins me. Good evening, sir. And the House is now adjourned until noon tomorrow. So tell me, what arm twisting or what's going to be done behind the scenes tonight?
Well, I think conservative members, including many, many members of the Freedom Caucus, are going to go one-on-one with their colleagues, most of them Freedom Caucus members, and figure out if there's some middle ground. As you know, Jim Jordan has endorsed, nominated, and voted for Kevin McCarthy now 3 times. So the 20 votes he has, it's to a great extent his challenge now to help get his friends and colleagues, fellow members of the Judiciary Committee in some cases, to recognize that you've got to make a best and final request. It's got to be reasonable, and we've got to move on. And so that's why noon tomorrow makes sense. Give us all time to have that before we come back to the floor. You know, in the meantime, there'll be operational talks everywhere. But, you know, 20 is a big number, but it's a number that isn't sufficient to create a speaker. It's only sufficient to delay the process.
All right. Obviously, tonight we have no Speaker of the House, but Speaker Pelosi resigned from that position today. It was supposed to be a day of celebration and triumph for the Republicans. It didn't quite turn out like that. It looks, pretty rugged there. What do you think? You're from California. Kevin McCarthy's from California. Speaker Pelosi's from California. What do you think she was thinking watching this today?
Well, I think she was a little bit, quite frankly, glad that the difficult time she had the last couple of years with AOC and some other members of the squad pales in comparison to this current challenge. But, you know, it's a sad day. I've been here. This is my 22nd year. Speaker Pelosi, a decade beyond that. But none of us go back the 100 years to a situation in which you go home on that first day, and we're not congressmen. I am still a congressman-elect. I become a congressman again only when I'm sworn in, and that swearing in won't take place until after we elect a speaker. So right now there's 434 people who are, you know, congressmen-elect right now, none of whom are congressmen.
In terms of Congresswoman Boebert from Colorado, she just squeaked by about 500 votes in her election in November. Yet she seems to be wielding a lot of demands. She wants a term limit discussion on the floor. She wants a border plan, motion to vacate, and she has an enormous amount of power because the margin is so narrow. Have you spoken to her? What is she saying? Because she's quite bold, being relatively new, having won by a small margin. She's making a lot of demands, although she can cause a lot of trouble for Republicans.
Well, you know, there's 12 congressmen-elect from California. So we're twice what it would take to not elect a speaker. There's lots of delegations and lots of groups who could stand firm against a candidate. And that's one of the challenges, is that a 6-seat majority, everybody has to accept somebody who is acceptable to all sides, but maybe not the choice of any one side. That's a situation where you've got a team, the entire McCarthy team, including Scalise and Johnson and so on, Elise and so on, represent the breadth of the party, just as Jim Jordan, the founder of the Freedom Caucus, as an incoming chair of Judiciary, represents that kind of diversity that we have as a party. So anybody can stop it. Here's the challenge. There are some things that could be done. All of us want a plan to enforce the border. So if reasonable requests are made for votes to be sooner rather than later, I think they'll be looked at favorably. But, you know, to come up with something like term limits, which of course has already been ruled to be a constitutional decision, not a statutory decision, you know, that's really not a productive request. So hopefully by tomorrow at noon, any requests will be productive and the conference will have an opportunity to consider them. And quite frankly, Kevin McCarthy will have an opportunity to see if there's anything more he can do to help the reasonable portion of those 19 to move over. And that, by the way, Greta, Jim Jordan and I have served together forever, and Jim is fighting tonight to bring everyone together on his nominee, which is Kevin McCarthy.
What's also sort of interesting about this is the fact that the White House is Democrat and the Senate is Democrat as well, is that no matter what happens in the House, it's not going to probably be much of a lawmaking function in the next 2 years. I mean, you've got to get the Senate to agree, Democrats, and you've got to get the White House. So it really is a question of about the committees and the investigations that are going on. So it seems to me that it's a little bit of a different sort of consideration in terms of, you know, who's going to be the speaker, how you set up the committees, you know, what it is that's on the agenda in terms of these committees. Am I right about that?
Greta, you've hit the nail on the head. Oversight 2.0 is on the agenda. Kevin has already announced that if he's Speaker, a number of select committees, including one on China, one on COVID, and quite frankly, a real investigation of the misconduct of Hunter Biden and perhaps the president, those will all be part of oversight. And as you know, what we've learned from Twitter tells us that we have to do oversight over social media and its interrelation with the executive branch. All of this will only happen once we have a speaker.
All right, well, you don't have to be in the House to become Speaker of the House. I didn't hear my name come up, though, today, and I listened to all 3 votes. But anyway, maybe tomorrow. Anyway, Congressman Darrell Issa.
It was on the tip of our tongues. It just, you know, you're probably going to be nominated. It just may not be until a few rounds later.
All right, well, I'll be listening to how you vote tomorrow at noon. Thank you, Congressman. Nice to talk to you.